thank you so much for providing this opportunity. And I must thank all the other co-presenters and other people who have spared their time here. Now, but it has been a wonderful time since yesterday. And after I have heard a lot of deliberations, I was thinking whether I've chosen the right topic or not. Well, before I move into the details of this topic, let me start with this little small story. Now, this story goes back a few hundred years. It was around 1790 somewhere, and that's somewhere in India. And that name of that place was Pune, colonial India. Well, two British doctors, surgeons they were roaming around some rural areas where they found that there is a gathering of people. And they heard that there is some sort of surgery going on. And being a specialist in surgery, that immediately interests them, and they moved to have a closer look. And then there they saw that there is something very interesting going on there, and they've never seen a sort of a surgery that's going on at that particular time ever before in their life. It was a sort of skin grafting being done by an illiterate, brick maker or something like that, upon a person whose nose was deliberately cut off by, the caste system, and he was a poor bullock cart puller or something like that, and they stayed for the entire process, and they noticed, they took notes of what are the things going on at that particular time, and later on they got it published in the Madras Gazette, which was subsequently been reprinted in London. Now, from that moment onwards, at that time onwards, the concept of plastic surgery got a new shape in England, and that's quite definite. We have documents reflecting that. Can you go to the last slide for the audience to have a look? Yeah, this one. Yeah, this one. Yeah, this one. Yeah. So this is a little read for everyone. The name was in March 1793 when Thomas Crusoe and James Findlay, two British colonial surgeons in Pune, India, witnessed a low-caste brickmaker performing successful plastic surgery on an unfortunate bullock driver whose nose has been deliberately cut off. Crusoe and Findlay published an account of the procedure, including diagrams. The obscure brickmaker reported the English surgeons had performed a superb skin graft and nose reconstruction using a technique superior to anything they had ever seen. It was taken up in Europe. I got a little underline on that too for your reference. Now, and this was commonly known as the Hindu method. I'll show the citation. There is another slide, so I can put it up later on. Now we can go back to the first slide. This is the slide. Now the question that arises out of this situation is, just for the time being, let's forget that it's 1793. And just imagine it's somewhere very close to after the WIPO and the TRIPS agreement have come up. Who would be the owner of the patent? Say, for example, let's not push this on that little brick maker who was doing that particular skin grafting on the point that it was well known beyond his capacity. But just imagine, he claims that it's me who have started this entire process. If we cut short that, well, I don't know whether we can go back and push the times. Now let's assume that there is something which is a question of morality involved in the entire process of using a particular technique in another country. Well, there are exceptions to patenting, I'm sure we all know. And perhaps a process of a surgery might not come with the purview of that. But that's the technicalities. Now, let me take you people to a second example, a second scenario. I think this scenario is of very recent origin, and all of us have well knowledge and well versed, even perhaps much more than an academician like myself. I think I read somewhere that it was a situation beyond control in Africa, where HIV was looming large in that area, and the drugs for HIV was already there, and it was very expensive. I think it was America who was owner of that, or a company was the owner of that. And as we all know, India is famous for their pharmaceutical tidbits, and Africa approached India to make drugs. Americans asked for the fees in whatever names so-called companies, like licensing or whatever it is. But Africans never had that money. So they started using it without the permission. And ultimately, well, even with all the laws and regulations on their side, I don't know whether they got any money. Or at least I think they must have not got what they should have got. Now, we come to the next slide, and this, again, is a debatable issue. The question is, no, the previous, yeah, yes. Who owns the patent in this case? Well, apart from, just forget the legality of the entire story. There is also a moral side of the story where there has been a lot of investment going on. There has been a lot of people who have been trying and tested, sacrificed their health. Perhaps many people have sacrificed their career also in furtherance of only one research, which ultimately brought out this vaccine. Now, well, I still think that there is something which was not good in this story, just as it happened in the previous one. After a little study of these two conflicting situations, I would like to push you people to the third slide. Now this is a very interesting slide, and why I'm trying to make everyone understand what is this market society, and why we are moving into this particular concept of market society is because in a market society, unlike our market economy, which is very normal, in market society everything is basically on sale. Starting from a prison upgrade, like there is a place in America, I can recollect right now, American, if you are wealthy, you can pay a little bit more of money, and then you can have a prison upgrade. But there's another very interesting case where I found out there. It's a case where there is we have life insurance, we have general insurances here in all countries, including that of fire insurance. In America also there is fire insurance. And just like here and all other places, that needs renewal. In India, however, the scenario is a little different. There's a responsibility of the state to take care of the property of the people at large. What happened in this particular peculiar case is that one person's house struck fire. And he called up people to come down and protect him, the fire company. So the fire company came and rushed to the spot. And then they found out that this particular house is beyond the insurance coverage. Well, as a matter of fact, the owner of the house actually, I don't know whether he forgot or he didn't, renewed the policy for that year. So he wanted the company to do the things, and he's willing to pay the premium. But unfortunately, the firefighters were all there, and they just watched the house to be slowly and steadily gutted into fire. The matter goes to the court, and the insurance company director, the CEO perhaps, came up with this defense that, see, it's just like you wreck a car and then you're claiming an insurance. First of all, you have to do insurance, and then you, if it wrecks at all, then that's a standard procedure. That's why you're bringing in other stories in this particular scenario. Now, this is a very interesting place where we are in. Now, why I'm telling you is this, is because whether this is good for the entire society, or at all are we interested in the concept called good, or something which is good for people at large. Now, there's another point that I would like to reflect here in this particular place. Even this morning we heard there are so many patent and other intellectual property cases, like registrations being done. But if you take my personal experience of the last 1 decade where I've been teaching in different parts of India, or in other colleagues whom I have communicated, they're telling, even my experience is that the quality of the students have deteriorated over a span of time. There are definitely exceptions. But the question is that when you go for a patent, we have to show that this is something which is really new, and there are a lot of things involved, inventions coming up. Oh my God. So take into consideration the number of patent applications. And we have to think again, oh my God, that the world is moving into a different level of quality. But if you look closely towards the number of patents from a very micro perspective, as again the Minister in charge of Consumer Affairs of the Malaysian government reiterated, that majority of them, 60 plus, he said, belongs to protection of foreign inventions in this jurisdiction. Now, if we take, say for example, a company called Ranbaxy, and now he's applying for patent in any number of jurisdictions separately. So he gets one, and in this way is pushing his number game. And we are very happy that we are also earning some sort of money from these companies. That's okay when it comes to the government. But the question is, where is this indigenous patent structure? He reiterated there should be a push to that. But I don't know why he did not give an actual picture, perhaps because of paucity of time. I even checked up with my jurisdiction, because the patent office is just a kilometer from where I stay in South. And I came to know that the number is not something that we can be proud of. And also, if you take into consideration the number of patent applications not being granted, you'll find that the majority of them are trying to push their indigenous or new inventions into the fore of intellectual property. Now, as we all know, that India is not very happy, or not very good in granting patents. So I was just wondering the reasons. Is it the so-called ethics or so-called things, or the so-called notion that we had everything in India at one point of the history or the other? I spoke to a lot of people who are working in the patent office, and I came to know that the main reason for this non-pro-patenting concept majorly lie in the thought that more than 70% of the patent that's being filed, and they've got it all across the world, are basically a little change in the entire existing thing, and then they restructure that, they move into, and now there is a new patent coming up for them. So let's see what WIPO has done in their entire lifetime, the last 25 years. What we have seen is that, when WIPO actually came up, it was 14 years and 6 years respectively for like the fool having 6 years and drug having 6 years, and later on it will file 20 years. And now it is moving into like in another 20 years because of, I'm talking about those 70% plus patents. That's terrible. I'll just take one further minute. Now, how do we balance this entire scenario? Because the reason behind I have put up these examples and thought is what happens in case of PCT, Open Cooperation Treaty, is that along with the domestic application, you are entitled to put forward an international application choosing the number of countries where you extend your patent to. Now, can there be one pill for all ailments? Like, there are n number of societies with diversified mindset. But when I have one invention to push all across the world, I think there is a huge challenge. And I think for that we need to respect the individual countries and simply not keep on criticizing them. Now, we should also try to respect traditional knowledge. I'm talking about WIPO. Also think newer ways how that can be exploited commercially, and can be perhaps be a part of the PCT convention with a separate chapter, if not with the purview of the concept of patent.
Done.
That's it. Thank you, sir.
Done. Very good. Good.
So I didn't read from the slides.
So, what questions does the audience have? You heard
I just want to comment a little bit about the Balancing Act.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from, that you see patents as investments. Actually, the US has quite a good job when they go, overseas with their patents.
Right.
However, the capacity building of patent examiners is very crucial, because when you have the PCT, you have a patent examiner that looks at the claims from one country to another.
That's right.
I give you an example, from India, actually, that's Lucivido versus Monsanto.
Yes.
Because the claims over there from the US, they were not accepted in the Indian jurisdiction. And for that particular matter, there is the whole case is still going on. So that's one point that I was going to do. And the other point that I have as well, I think is a balancing act in regards to, IP has a public side and a private side as well. I think I go back to Thomas Jefferson, 1789, to the Patent Act. He was always worried about having this public
and the private.
Public and private. Then it has changed because of all the things, Ronald Reagan and all the patent reform and that sort of thing. But that was his vision, to have something to give back to the society. So I understand that you are looking at investments, because this is pretty much what the conflict is between, right, the public and the private.
The two examples that I gave at the outset is just a reflection of this conflict.
Yeah. So I was just wondering what your comments would be in regards to
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you.
any other comments?
All the too eager for the
Questions?
presentation.
What?
I think they're too eager for the presentation.
Yes, but we're
We can't
let
push
you
it to the
off
last.
too easily. I mean,
No, we can-
this balancing business, and all of these questions. The first question I have for you is why, with over 1 billion people and Indians like Chakrabarty making inventions in the United States, India produced not one single drug in the 20th century. Not one. Why? Because the Nehru government destroyed the patent system. There was no incentive to do anything but copy. Now we will see if that changes, or whether Indians will do all their work abroad where there is patent protection. And in terms of balancing, yeah, everybody knows there's some crappy patents. There have been crappy patents for 150 years, ever since there's been a patent system. People have written books on, this crappy patent. I could show you books written over 100 years ago with foolish patents listed. I mean, some of them are really stupid. But that's been true for a long time. So India has slowly now begun to accept the idea of incentives for its inventors. And China has accepted that. And China is doing better. Yeah. And we'll see. India should do better than China because China's a dictatorship. And you know, it's got real problems. But they recognize that patents are important. So we'll see what India does to repair the damage of the Nehrus. I know that's political, but let's face it, Nehru was a disaster. He did one good thing. He created the Indian Institutes of Management and the Indian Institutes of Technology, which are phenomenal institutions. And that was pushed by Nehru. I can't think of another thing.
Sir, much is going to come up in India. We only gave you time to balance our history. We had done much in history.
No, I'll just try to push on that particular point. Like, you know, when the Britishers came in and the colonial people left, if you look at the statistics of the position of India, India was staggeringly at 23% growth rate, and when they left, India were hardly 2 or 3%. And what the biggest, disaster that actually happened when the Britishers left is that they have already invoked the poison of divide and rule. They have made a very strategic policy up there in the Kashmir zone so that they can have their say there. And there are a lot many. I'm not.
Okay, but we're not going to do all of British history and imperial
That's not
history.
So we basically started 60 years back with 1%, and now we are 9%.
Actually, you were one of the richest countries in the world at the end of the Second World War. Where Britain was bankrupt, couldn't feed its people, India was much wealthier. But let's get on.
Now let us overcome now.
Yeah. We'll do it. So we'll do it, sir.
We're going to get on with that.
Thank you very much, sir.